Ladies ready?
Yes, we're ready.
The Delaware County Commissioner meeting for April 19th is back in session. It's 1:30. And with that, I believe...
Okay. We are in session for reviewing for consideration of a petition filed by Jennings Land Development LLC and others for the vacation of a portion of existing McNamara ditch and a draining easement and the creation of a new relocated section of the ditch within a new easement.
Do we need a motion on that?
No.
Okay.
Okay. So we're ready to handle the viewing, and I'm going to read the rules, the guidelines that we will follow for this purpose, and if you'll bear with me. Welcome again to the viewing for the consideration of vacation of a portion of the existing McNamara ditch and drainage easement and the creation of a new relocated section of the ditch with a new easement. I'm Gary Merrill, I'm the president of the board. To my left is Commissioner Barb Lewis, and to her left is Commissioner Jeff Benton. And for the health, safety, and well-being of county residents in response to the continued threat of COVID in accordance with orders of the Ohio Director of Health, public participation in this viewing will be by virtual means. Over the last year, we have conducted several meetings this way. However, occasionally we experience technical difficulties, and this may be new for you, so we ask for your patience if we have any difficulties. As an overview of what will happen today, a video will be available to gain an overview of the project limits and specific areas. No testimony or decisions are made here at the viewing. This is a way for the board to become familiar with the area. The first hearing on the petition is scheduled for Thursday, June 17th at 10 o'clock a.m. At the hearing, we will hear a report from the engineer's office on the petition, and that is also the time for testimony for and against the petition. When it is time for landowners to offer the drainage concerns you may have in that area, we will work our way through the participants on the Zoom platform. Your line connection will be unmuted and you will be asked to identify yourself. If you're a part of the Zoom virtual hearing, you are not required to participate, but you may choose to do so when asked. And now I will turn the proceedings over to Brett Bacon and Dan Barr with the Soil and Water Conservation District. Brett.
Good afternoon, Commissioners. Brett Bacon, Delaware Soil and Water Conservation District. We're going to put up the map that you have paper copies of for the benefit of the Zoom participants here. While Sarah's getting that up, I just will make a note about this project, or this petition request is a vacation or partial vacation of an existing project. As such, all of the financial costs for this project will be borne by the petitioner. They'll actually do the construction work if we proceed to that point, and any additional costs related to the McNamara project would be assessed to them. There'd be no proposed cost at this point to the remaining landowners in the watershed. So just wanted to put that out there for everybody's benefit. All right, thank you, Sarah. So the video that we're going to play is going to start at the downstream end of the yellow polygon there, towards the bottom of the map. That's the downstream part of the project. It's going to fly over the project area to the north. This is starts out as an existing open channel. You'll be able to see the railroad off to the left side of the screen. As we get up towards the top, it'll bend to the east, and you'll pick up Pyatt Road, and then we'll end it at the approximate upstream part of where they're intending to vacate the existing project. You also see on the map, I've drawn in the approximate location of where the reroute of the drainage will occur. Again, they'll do that construction work to reroute that drainage, and then after that would be done, we would have a final hearing, assuming you approve the petition request at the first hearing. We would have a final hearing to formally accept that as part of the McNamara project at that point. So, Sarah, we'll go to the video. We're good. Let it go. Again, this is open channel here, was constructed as part of the original McNamara project in 2009. And this is where the open channel ends. It goes to tile and surface grade at this point. And then, Sarah, you can go ahead and stop it. That's about the limit.
Okay. Any of the commissioners have any questions at this point, or?
I noticed the yellow box, if you will, yellow boxed out area doesn't go all the way to where the rerouted.
That where the boxed area stops, that is junction with the existing McNamara stream, or where our constructed open channels outletted. They're not proposing to vacate that easement. That's going to remain as it is.
Okay. Okay.
So what I've drawn out is just the approximate area of the easement to be vacated.
Okay. I gotta ask, why do they want to move it?
They're going to build a sports park there.
But it seems like the logical place would be against the railroad, but apparently they need some of that ground.
I think their arrangement, and I can, Dave Thomas, who's the engineer, one of the engineers working on their project, could probably speak much better than I could as to their need to relocate that drainage as part of their engineering for their site plan.
So, any other? So basically today we're just.
Everybody hear me?
Yeah, Dave, did you catch Commissioner Benton's question there?
Yeah, I believe the question was something about why we are looking to vacate this section, is that correct?
Yes.
Yeah. Basically, we've got a 55-acre sports park that's going to have 4 soccer fields of regulation size that are all synthetic fields, plus we have parking. We probably have about 500 or 600 spaces north of where this particular section of the channel is to be vacated along the railroad tracks. So what we're looking to do would be to reroute that section that is been determined to not be a jurisdictional section, whereas once we get into the trees, that's a jurisdictional section of the stream, so we're leaving that. But in order to get the fields within the boundaries of the site and provide parking, we need to remove that particular section of McNamara Ditch and reroute it around, which will follow future Pyatt Road down to where we propose to tie in again, which I think was on that exhibit. You could kind of see where the point for tying in is located.
Okay. Thank
So
you.
it's a more efficient way of handling the surface water, basically.
I couldn't hear that.
It's a more efficient way to handle the surface water.
I'm having a hard time understanding.
He asked, it's a more efficient way of handling things?
Yes, it would be, yeah.
Okay.
And we'll have some more detailed exhibits prepared for you at the first hearing, kind of, this was kind of a quick and dirty. We'll get a little bit better exhibit for the
Commissioner Lewis, do you have
first
any
hearing.
questions or comments? And I don't believe Commissioner Benton has anything additional. The people online, does anyone have interest in speaking? Again, this is simply a viewing, no testimony, just simply anything you want to point out specifically that the commissioner should be aware of. Does anyone have a comment?
I do not.
Mr. Allen or Mr. Schuler, do you have any comments? If not, and just not required to have a comment, obviously, we just want to make sure we don't exclude anyone. Okay.
Bob here, I do not have any comments. Thank you for asking.
Okay. One last time, or is there anyone have any comments? If not, and there's no additional questions from the commissioners, Then, for the purposes of our meeting today, the viewing is concluded. And we will look forward to Thursday, June 17th at 10 o'clock for our first hearing. Thank you very much. Thank you, guys. It was short. We'll allow the clerks to get things in order before we proceed. We will have two presentations. And according to the agenda, the first presentation will be regarding Enterprise Government Vehicle Leasing Program. I believe we as commissioners asked for an update on that about 3 weeks ago, if I recall correctly. And with that, Mr. Melvin, Mr. Farmer, when y'all are ready.
Okay. Mike's passing out a hard copy.
Thank you.
So as you requested, I went through and looked at some fleet data, looking at kind of the high level. Went back and looked from when we started, in 2019 was when we first got our first enterprise vehicles in the lease program. So went back to 2018 to look at the fleet prior to getting the enterprise vehicles, and the kind of a snapshot of that at that time in 2018. We had 200, again, this is the fleet excluding the engineer's office, so all the other offices outside of the county engineer's office. Had 270 vehicles, and the average mileage of odometer reading of those vehicles was 75,453, and the average age was 7 years. Just did a update, pulling off our maintenance. The current fleet as of this month, 278 vehicles. The average mileage of those vehicles is 58,796. And the average age is 6 years. When we looked at the enterprise program, lease program, we kind of set the goals of reduce the upfront capital purchases, reduce the vehicle repair costs, and increase the fuel economy, which will equate to savings overall in the fleet. Currently, 16% of the fleet is enterprise lease vehicles. I know, one thing we were looking at trying to reduce some of the fleet size, and as you can see, it's gone up, but I wanted to highlight in the next slide. Some offices we have gone through and have been able to reduce the number of vehicles in their fleets. So we, right-size some of those vehicles. The increases have been in the sheriff's office, and minor increases, building safety, facilities. And a lot of these offices is where you have daily used vehicles. You have a person assigned those vehicles, and they're not really a pool vehicle. They're a work assignment vehicle. So again, that's more of an in-depth to what the offices individually look like. And again, you see the different in the mileages and the average age. Good example, the enterprise. Just a side note, we did order some new vehicles for 2021. Those vehicles from Enterprise are just starting to come in. One of the vehicles is for the auditor's office. That will greatly reduce their average mileage and average age. When we look at the fuel economy, one thing we went through, looking at the mileage logs from our maintenance software, where we import all the mileages and the fuel into that. In 2018, total miles driven was 2.4, almost 2.5 million miles. And we used 188,000 gallons of fuel. The average fuel economy, that equates to 13.2 miles per gallon. 2020, this is, these are for calendar years. In 2020, we still drove 2.5, almost 2.6 million miles. But we only used 160,000 gallons of fuel with an average efficiency of 16 miles per gallon.
John, let me jump in. I think that's fascinating. We were both shocked that the miles in 2020 were more.
Yeah.
With COVID, we would have thought that it would have went down.
Again, the largest fleet mileage is the sheriff's office. They drive over 1.5 million miles annually. Yeah, and that's all, patrol division, warrants, and transports, and all that, so.
I'm probably missing something. You say 34,400 gallons. 2018 is 188,000, 2020 is 160.
If you would have
That's roughly 28,000.
if you would have used the 13.2 miles per gallon, if you would have used, the 160 is at 16 miles per gallon, so it's the difference. The fuel economy was how many more, it's the miles per gallon savings.
The 13,
Yeah.
2.8 miles per gallon, times that, times the miles. Yep. But I mean, overall, we're definitely seeing an increase in the fuel efficiency of the vehicles.
If we would have, in 2020, had the same fleet as 2018, and we were at 13.2, we would have used 194,000 gallons, 623 gallons. So that's what the difference is.
Okay. Look at maintenance. In 2018, we completed 898 work orders, and the total cost on those work orders was $372,000. Last year, we completed more work orders, 927 work orders, and the total cost was $299,000. So we are seeing a savings in the maintenance by doing more routine preventative maintenance and less costly repair issues. And, excuse me, this is a look at the enterprise fleet in a glance. This is the highest users of the enterprise program. Building safety is the largest user with 71% of their fleet. You might note there really hasn't been any change in their efficiency, fuel efficiency, because they've gone from, basically they had some pickup trucks, and they utilize a mid-size SUV, a Dodge Durango, for their primary vehicle, who's out in construction sites with inspectors' gears and stuff. So that's the vehicle they went with. Dog warn two of the 4 vehicles are now the enterprise, and they're pickup trucks, F-150s, and we're seeing an increase in their efficiency. Another thing to note too is, the last column there is the number of work orders we performed for those departments. Last year, we've gone down to just 3 work orders for building safety. They got a lot of new vehicles last year, so. Dog wardens, the decrease, so, and down the line. So sanitary engineers is kind of a combination of sanitary and regional sewer district. So those are those things. And just I want to take a quick snapshot too of, the vehicles we disposed of through Gov Deals. In 2018, we sold 26 vehicles. The average age was an 05, and total, sales was 27,800. We really need to combine, 2020 and 2021. A lot of the 21 numbers are the ones that we replaced last year. Last year we sold 15 vehicles, average age of 07, but we brought in 24,000. This year we've sold 12 vehicles, average age of 09, and we've already generated 46,000.
Is that because they're newer vehicles?
Yes, I have this last slide is the case study of this. We just sold this vehicle. It's a 2014 GMC Sierra. It's a double cab, 2-wheel drive, had 91,000 miles on it. We purchased it in 2014 for $22,217. It sold for $15,300 on Gov Deals, for our net sales of $14,152. So we drove it for 7 years for $8,000. So again, that goes to having the equity. That's one of the factors on the enterprise program we won't know until we get into the turn back in. How well they can sell the vehicles, because we will get any equity in the vehicles when what they sell over what they, the base price of the lease is. So again, that will reduce the replacement costs.
So this is a really good case study. I mean, you can see, we paid $22,000 and sold it for $14,100. But we still purchased it up front, so we spent $22,000. With the enterprise fleet program, we're leasing them each year, and it'll be targeting sales. So this one looks, pretty good with $1,000 a year in capital cost, but it'll even be better when we, with our lease structure and how they're able to strategically, sell it. This actually probably could have been sold a couple of years ago if we'd have done this program for what we put into it. Or I think the economy right now is there's more premium on used vehicles, but.
Yeah, there's definitely a premium on used vehicles, but this is the example, 7-year-old vehicle, so with the Enterprise 5-year lease, at 5 years, we'll evaluate the vehicle, whether we turn it in and hopefully get the equity back, and that will offset the replacement, or we may run it for a couple more years. But with the Enterprise lease program, they'll be doing the disposition, they'll be able to sell them. Currently, we have to sell all our vehicles we own through Gov Deals, internet auctions. So. But it has been real strong here lately.
What percentage of our vehicles will be in the Enterprise? Because you're not going to have police vehicles aren't going to be in it.
No.
EMS isn't going to be in it. So what's ideally, what is it? What percentage would that be roughly?
40%, I want to say about potentially 40%. We did expand.
And we're at 16, so roughly 1.5 times more, roughly.
Yeah. Go back to this chart. When we first looked at Enterprise, we weren't even talking with the sheriff, and last year they purchased leased 6 vehicles for their detective's office. So we're even branching out beyond what we originally targeted as the potential fleet for Enterprise vehicles. So, but still think that 40% of the fleet is a good number because, yeah, the sheriff's office can lease the detectives undercovers, but they do not want to, and Enterprise doesn't want to get into leasing patrol division, the police package cruisers and such.
My only observation is really there's 2 different pots here, and ones that are Enterprise and ones that are not.
Mm-hmm.
And as I recall from the conversation 2 or 3 years ago, the Enterprise pot, the goal was to reduce those vehicles by 8-10 vehicles.
Mm-hmm.
So it'd really be helpful to see that as a separate
Okay. Yeah.
pot, because really when we are growing vehicles in the sheriff's department, so it doesn't allow you to tell the story.
There's not a clean story, to this.
Does that make sense?
Yep. Yeah. So.
Because the goal hopefully is that we're going to reduce those vehicles.
Because again, that's where I think you do see the reductions, in numbers, like the commissioners, adult court services, and juvenile courts stayed the same, but I think there might be a couple vehicles there we can reevaluate too as well as JFS. We'll see how they return to the services they were providing pre-COVID. I know JFS, actually it was juvenile court, their mileages for 2020 dramatically reduced because they weren't doing the home visits. Obviously, once the COVID restrictions, they'll go back to doing home visits and such, and I would imagine their mileage usage will go up. It was almost a third of what it was in 2019 for 2020 for that department in particular.
There were 3 things we were trying to accomplish. Save money on gas, save money on repairs, and reduce the fleet. We've clearly saved money on gas, saved money on repairs, and that's working very nicely.
Yep.
But studying the fleet numbers, X the sheriff, we've gone down, but still some departments have gone up. Like the sanitary engineer went up 3.
Yep. And it goes to vehicles that aren't pool vehicles, and sanitary, building inspectors, sanitary inspectors, they have signed vehicles because they have they use a vehicle daily.
Yeah, I think
To
we
perform their
could
tasks.
do a little deeper dive.
Onto those vehicles.
I'm thinking that maybe there was if there's 1 or 2 new inspectors hired and construction managers, that would impact the fleet there.
Yep. I know, in particular, like the service center, we've cut down the number of old vehicles. Loaner is that, newer fleet, we're not going to keep these laying around. Use the commissioner's vehicle if it's available. They need to bring a car in for service. So, yes.
Yeah, so it seems like in certain departments, we've accomplished the 3rd mission.
Yep.
And others, we've either held steady or not reduced, or we've actually increased. And that's, I guess, those are where my questions would be is, why would sanitary engineer need 3 more vehicles?
Increased staff.
They haven't increased staff that much. So that, anyway.
Yeah,
That's
if you go
my
back to the
question still.
original, if you go back to that sheet, adult court services, obviously.
Yeah, they're clearly understand, they've limited their pool cars or whatever.
Yep.
But then the sanitary engine and the facilities went up 2. I assume you know why that.
Yep.
And the others, other than sanitary,
Sanitary went 4 and sheriff
sanitary
went
went
9.
4, the sheriff, they've got more cars on the road.
CSEA went out.
Yeah, they're removed.
It'd be interesting, JFS went up 1.
They purchased or they leased a caravan, because a lot of times when they go out on a children's services case, they need a bigger than their Focus. So I would anticipate we could probably eliminate 1 or 2 of those Focuses out of their fleet.
In the enterprise pod, I'm gonna call it that,
Mhm.
there's really 2 groups as I see it. Group 1 is those who need a car
For
to
their
do their job
duties.
all day.
Yep.
The other group, they use it occasionally. We have cars sitting around unused, and that's not good use of taxpayer dollars.
Yeah, I
We
think,
need to, I think the key to make this thing as successful as it can be is, I agree with Commissioner Benton, we're showing good improvement in the maintenance and the fuel because they're newer cars and a little more efficient. But we don't need vehicles sitting around idle. There needs to be some sort of pooling of these cars. Not everybody has to have their own car or
Correct.
extra cars for that, because we may need it once this month or twice this month. It's not a good, efficient use of our
Yep.
taxpayers' dollars. in
we'll
my
work with the
opinion.
departments to help identify those vehicles. I think that would be good information to have.
That's the only way you're gonna get to the 7, 8, 10 reduction we
Mhm.
talked about.
Yep.
Is some joint ownership of vehicles rather than everyone
Yeah.
having their own.
I do think, I anticipate once we got to Bixby, and we're gonna have a large group of offices that will better utilize a pool, out there, as well as then we could concentrate on have pool fleet, pool vehicles for downtown and then for the Bixby, and that will really cover a majority of our offices, and we could better utilize the pool and not having that, individual offices having that, oh, we need a vehicle because we gotta go to conference once a month or something. Yep.
So conceptually, you agree with what?
Absolutely, yeah. I think it'll be a lot easier when we combine on some of these offices too.
Interesting too, the average mileage, some of them have very, very low average mileage.
Yep.
If you look at the coroner, their previous car had 14,000 miles on it, was 13 years old. So it was driving 1,000 miles a year.
Yep. But that's, yeah.
They've got a new one. EMA has had 3 vehicles with 35,000, so they're not, driving much over 8 years either.
Yep.
So again, I think we're getting more efficient in most of the spots, but there's still some question marks.
Yep.
In
Okay.
terms of the number of
vehicles.
Yeah, I think if we just analyze the miles driven on each of the cars in 2020, it would show where there's some,
Yep.
Potential ones that can be pooled or reduced.
Yeah.
Any other questions or comments?
Thank you, John.
Thank you.
I think, John, I think it's a good beginning, and we just
Yeah.
have some work to do. Maybe during the budget, kind of give us an update possibly, would that be reasonable?
Absolutely. We do need, yes, I think this is a good start, and when we, talking about working with offices, we need to work kind of ahead of budget, working on the 2020 orders. We want to be ready going into budget, have those numbers finalized, so that absolutely the best time to reevaluate this as well. So maybe even prior to budget, we may be looking at the 2022 order and bring that to you with this update.
I think the budget's just a progress on how we're getting closer to the goal. I understand you may have to make commitments earlier than that.
Yep.
If that's it? Okay, I believe that takes care of, and thank you, John. Thank you,
welcome.
Mike.
Thank you, John.
And that takes us to budget review, Mr. Fromer and Ms. First.
Oh, I got one more thought on the fleet thing that we didn't talk about is the capital cost savings.
Thank you.
How many vehicles did we acquire through enterprise?
16% of,
45 vehicles, so that's 45 times 20,000, that's $1 million, of capital costs that we didn't spend.
yeah.
Oh,
So now you obviously have the offset of the lease payments, but, so anyway,
Good point.
that's a good positive factor.
It's a great opportunity to be more efficient, and I think we're making progress.
So how do we magically make this be the main screen last time?
You ready for it?
Yeah. Oh wow, Jennifer's got the magic.
There you go.
Oh wow.
Ta-da.
Okay, we talked about doing a quarterly, budget review. So today we have our first run through of the first quarter, the first 3 months of 2021. And, please go ahead and ask any questions as we go through it. It's meant to be kind of a working discussion. So starting on the revenue side, and we kind of chose the last 3 years as a benchmark to kind of look at. And then we kind of took a play on the traffic signal on the far right. Marissa and I were back and forth on that a little bit, but we kind of put a ranking on what we feel about how things are. If you look at our total revenue in Q1 2021, it's actually $35 million, which is up from total revenue in 19 and 20, a good trend. 2020 was actually pre-COVID. COVID really didn't start hitting until mid-March. So you can see that the revenues, are up. Now, I will say, if you look at the very bottom row in miscellaneous revenue, we had I called it a road rebate. We had basically paid forward on a road project in 2020 and then received a revenue credit in 2021. So you probably could take that 1.5 out of the 35. So we're probably more like 33.5 in total revenue for the first quarter of this year. Property tax seems really strong. The first property tax that was collected, we were at 6.7, 6.8, and jumped to 7.5. Our sales tax is actually down a little bit from 2020. It was interesting. I think December, which is when we collect in March, or is it February? It was pretty soft. It was about $600,000 down from what the previous year. So I think the other months have been up a little bit. So last Christmas time, people weren't out shopping as much without all the family get-togethers. I think people just didn't spend the money. But our sales tax, we have it as a kind of a yellow mark, because I think that's something to continue to watch, because it, clearly, if you look at from 19 to 20, there's a $1.4 million growth, and we clearly didn't see that in the first quarter. Charges for service, which are a lot of our code compliance fees, building, permits, conveyance fees, properties transferring hands. We're up 4.5. We're up, and if you look at that trend, that's a pretty strong trend there. I think we've been talking a lot about how the building is going up. As far as interest income, I'm sure this is not a surprise to anybody, but that has fallen down, significantly. So our interest, of 1.5 and 1.2 the last 2 years was at $300,000 for the first quarter. And then the miscellaneous revenue, once again, we put that in there, kind of an outlier. There was a $1.6 million on the road rebate, so that kind of, I think, pumped up the revenue a little bit more than where it, is. So I don't know if you guys have any questions about that, or, we just pulled.
I agree that probably should be part of the.
What's that?
I agree that probably should be part of the mix. I do think it kind of distorts the numbers a little bit.
Okay, when you look at expenses, our operating expenses, when you look at those in the first quarter, it was at $25.2 million. $3 million of that 25.2 was the 2020, some of the programs we did that was paid in 2021. the community enhancement grants, the small business grants, the business advocacy grants, and the pathways to hope. So probably what we should have done is on the first slide, showed kind of a revised revenue number. We showed a revised, operating expense number here of about 22.2 million of pretty much standard, which is good to see. That means people coming out of the gate this year have been a little bit, conservative on spending. You can see that salary and benefits. Now I flipped the color of the arrows because, when the revenues are up, that's good, but when they're down, it's good. So we flipped the arrows here. Salary and benefits, you can see it's, we're down for the first quarter at 12.8. Our services and charges, where we were at 4.3 last year, we're down to 4 million. I think, people just aren't, we're still kind of in COVID times a little bit, not using as much, and material and supplies seem to be fairly consistent. You might look at this and say, okay, well, these are, if we did this every quarter, we're going to be spending more than what our budget is. We actually do our transfers in the first quarter for the data with our IT, economic development, our capital improvements, our insurance liability, and JFS. So we do those transfers in the first quarter, which kind of increases those operating expenses. So I don't know if there's any questions on that. I think that all in all, if you look at the revenue, I think our revenue is cautiously optimistic. Maybe, it's holding its own, but I don't think we've totally rebounded either. Expenses, I think the expenses are pretty solid, and I think we've done a good job coming out the first quarter and keeping things, in line and not overspending. At this point, we had, when we did the budget, we had developed a contingency list, and we kind of talked about, revisiting it after the first quarter financials. I wasn't planning on kind of going through stuff in detail. I gave you guys a copy of it. I figured you can take a look at the budget information, and we could kind of talk through. I passed out a separate sheet that shows these items, and then it also has the sheriff's miscellaneous items on the second page. Once again, it was, EMS training and travel. We cut some stuff out, anticipating to be more virtual online. EMS ambulance, we cut an ambulance out. Building safety had 2 positions that we, put on a contingency list depending on the how growth was happening in the first quarter. Prosecutor Treasurer's Office we talked through. The public defender case management software, I don't think we're going to need that. So that's something that probably won't be needed. Talking to Carl and Anthony about the Board of Election COVID voting requirements. They weren't sure yet, but they didn't think we would need that additional, the money. So once again, this is just that contingency list that we, developed and can look at and talk further about. So
you're gonna be with us individually on that, or?
yeah, I mean, once you guys get a chance to take a look at it, we can meet and see what your thoughts are. I think some of the items already kind of took care of themselves. But I think we can kind of talk through that. It's interesting, one side note, ambulances right now are a year out from purchasing. So if you purchase one now, it would be 2022 in April to get it, so.
Run volumes are down.
There's just, I don't know. There's just, it's one of those things where it's like,
The opposite.
yeah.
They had a little surplus in inventory.
So,
Could be COVID grant dollars that.
It's probably what it is.
Oh, yeah, that's
Probably
Probably
using
is.
it,
Eligible use.
I guess.
So I don't know if there's any other questions or thoughts on the budget. Like I said, I think our, the property taxes were very strong. I think we had a reevaluation in there, so that was, pretty good. And like I said, I think the salaries and benefits line items, have been, trailing, down where they normally are. And so I think the sales tax is something to look at. It's really that month of December was really interesting.
The other
People.
3 months that we've seen the information for, we haven't actually received 4 months yet. But, the other 3 were good.
Yeah, I'm curious to see too with, yeah, just coming into this, this season, when you're out at the malls and different places, they seem very busy, but whether that's translating to sales, we'll see.
Thank you, that's very helpful. Really good high-level summary, just kind of what we'd like to see. Very
Well,
helpful.
Karen and I mapped it out, and Marissa made it look really pretty, as always, so.
Yeah, it's very pretty as well as informative.
That's right. Yeah, very good.
Okay.
Any other questions? Thank you, Mike, thank you, Karen.
Thank you.
And I believe Jennifer said we might have a piece of business, yes or no? No?
I,
Thursday, okay.
I haven't heard of it.
Is there anything else?
not that I know of.
Nope.
If there's nothing else, without objection, we are adjourned.